This week, I am talking with one of my very favorite mystery writers, Louise Penny. She's the author of the Three Pine Mysteries, and if you haven't met these characters, I highly recommend picking up the first in the series, Still Life. The newest book, All the Devils Are Here, will be published this September. You can pre-order a copy at nantucketbookpartners.com. The connection for our talk was a little poor, but the audio was great. Enjoy! Hi, Louise!
Hey, Tim!
How are you doing under these circumstances?
I'm sure you've heard this from a lot of writers. There's not a huge change in my daily routine from writing without the virus and writing with the virus. So I'm doing okay. Do you know what I find? I find for myself, it sort of moved into a different emotional phase now where I think I'm feeling a little bit more afraid. The initial shock and even excitement has worn off as we all tried to find an equilibrium. And now I'm just settling in for the long, it's really sort of hitting home, settling in for the long term and feeling a little bit more vulnerable, I think, but the resolve hasn't changed.
Yeah, I agree.
How are you doing?
I'm getting things done that I never have done before. I mean, even this new Tim Talk series that I'm doing is something really exciting. I guess I'm just trying to find the positives
right.
where I can. And, connecting like this probably wouldn't have happened without the virus. So
yeah, it's weird, isn't it? There's so many good things happening and yet so much tragedy.
Yeah.
I've never known a time that was so, I guess 9/11 would have been like this, or the Blitz in London in the war, where the worst and the best is happening at the same time, and it's as humans trying to grasp that. I'm repainting a bathroom. I've figured out how a vacuum works.
Well, all good things. I mean, it's definitely a watershed moment. That's for sure. It's everything's going to be a little different after this.
Yeah.
You've gone through some pretty huge losses in your personal life recently. Your husband passed away in 2016, and then Maddie just told me your dog passed away recently.
Yeah, Bishop about slightly less than a year ago. Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Do you have a dog?
Yes.
Small Shih Tzu
named Simba, and he rules the house. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm deeply grateful that Michael isn't here now to live through this, especially with his dementia. That would have been dreadful for him and terribly frightening for me. I don't know, it's bad enough, but then to have uncertainty added to all of the uncertainty that comes with dementia, I don't know how people are doing it. My heart is just breaks for those people. But he was also a doctor, and I know had he been well, he would have volunteered to help out, and that would have been terrifying for me. So selfishly, I'm grateful that he doesn't have to face this, but I miss him. I'm still crying. I cry more now than I had in the last year, just because I miss him. I wish he was here. I wish, I miss his company, and I miss Bishop, the dog. How wonderful it would be to cuddle with him. But my brother is here, and while we do not cuddle, we are at least stop that rumor. We're company for each other.
Grief is something that I think I went through some grief recently too, and it's one of the greatest mysteries to me, and I didn't really know that until I went through it, because everyone goes through it differently. It's not something that really we talk about as a society. Your grief and my grief is going to be differently at different times. Like you said, Michael passed away in 2016, and you're just kind of coming to terms with some of it. Have you gotten any insights about grief after these years? Anything you...
Do you know what it has done is, I've gotten insights into myself. I was fortunate within the realm of it being a pile of merde, that it was, I could anticipate it. I could see it coming from a long way off. And so on the one hand, I lived in that anticipated grief for a long time. I was able to come to terms with losing Michael slowly. I didn't have the sudden accident, or the tragedy we've just gone through, the terrible time in Nova Scotia where many people were shot dead, killed by a man with a gun, just fairly recently, and how awful that must be for the survivors, of course, to not be able to see that coming. But I guess one of the great things it did is it's a terrific leveler. It has made me so much more. I hoped I had started off as compassionate, but it has really made me much more compassionate toward others, and understanding what others are going through, that loss, less judgmental, more connected as a person to other people, to the human race, to the very fact of being human, because loss is part of it. So it's a humanizing experience. In many ways, it's tenderizing.
That's beautiful. Michael was the inspiration for Gamache, your main character, which pretty much means that I would have adored Michael, because
and he would have adored you. Are you kidding? Yeah, you'd have become his grandson in no time.
Has your relationship with your main character Gamache changed now with Michael's passing? Has it influenced the character at all?
That's a great question, Tim. I was afraid it would. That once Michael died, that I wouldn't be able to write Gamache again, just because of the grief, because it would be just too painful. As it turns out, it was the opposite. I found that it was comforting, that Michael became immortal, that I get to hang out with Michael every day. Now, Michael and Gamache, they aren't the same person. If you read the books and then met Michael, you'd never have said, oh, that's Gamache, because it's not necessarily clear, but there's so many similarities in character. So it's comforting. It hasn't, if anything, it made my connection to Gamache even deeper, I suppose. But it wasn't the crippling effect that I was afraid it would have.
I'm so happy to hear that, because to have that outlet for so many reasons would have been devastating if that had changed for the negative. So.
Oh yeah, and then to maybe even force myself to write, because I had commitments and whatnot, but not have my heart in it, because these books are, they have to make sense intellectually and rationally, but really they're meant to be read first through the heart, through the chest, and then up into the head. And if my heart wasn't connected to what I was writing, they would be quite callow.
So I have to know, the number one question when I found out you were willing to do this interview, I had to know how the Three Pines characters would be reacting to this virus. Especially Ruth, because these characters to me are so real that I sometimes want to just be able to call them and be like, well, or Zoom with them. So yeah. What do you have any reactions in your mind that you think?
What do you think? I'll tell you in a moment, but what do you think Ruth would do? Ruth, the mad, demented, brilliant poet. Elderly.
I think Ruth would not be following the rules of self-isolation right now. I don't think. I think she would, she would think she was a little bit invincible from getting it, even though how old is Ruth now? She's
about 120 actually, as is the duck.
Yes. So she would be most susceptible of getting it. And then she would, if Gabri or anyone were saying anything to her about you should be safe, she would have some choice words for them, I'm sure. And I guess that's how I would see Ruth. She'd be very spunky and always have a one-liner if someone were like, well, you really shouldn't be out here. You really shouldn't be doing this.
What I see Ruth doing is similar to what you're saying, that she would feel that the rules do not apply to her, because that's pretty much how she goes through life. But she would definitely apply the rules to others. So she would be a complete hypocrite. So she would be doing whatever she wants to do, but then turn others in who even come close to breaking the rules. I think she would be a real harridan. I'm certainly not going to put the pandemic in the next book, just because it's hard enough living through it once. I don't want to live through it again. And I can't imagine others really want to read about the pandemic once we are freed up. Yeah, and and thinking about how Three Pines would react kind of saddens me a little bit. So I try not to think too much about this terrible event being imposed on a place that is meant to be a place of safety.
Good. That's a good point.
Stop it.
we are living history right now, and I was just wondering, as a creative thinker, any insights of the lasting effects of this? I mean,
I don't know. I worry a lot about the economic fallout. I think we're seeing that the incredible resilience of people, and that we're finding within ourselves. The line from, is it Camus who said that within the winter, I am finding within myself an invincible summer. And I think many people are finding in the middle of the winter of the pandemic, of this time in our lives, something really remarkable: the strength, the resilience, a coming together, a courage. I mean, it's awe-inspiring to see what people are doing. And at the same time, it's so maddening to see how some others are so selfish. So they've got their heads up there, what's thinking, that they are, again, above all of this, that they are endangering others, that they're just giving the scientists and science the finger because it's inconvenient, because they just don't want to do it anymore. And how dare they? You think, but why don't you just think for a moment about the caregivers who are putting their lives on the line? Do you think that they're bored with this? Of course they are. Do you think they're tired? Of course they are. But they still go in, and how dare you hold a house party because you're tired of this?
Yeah.
Just suck it up, do what's right for the greater good, even if you don't understand it. None of us understand this. You just do what you're being told. Resign from the debating society. Just do it, because it's the right thing to do. Not the easy thing, it's the right thing to do. And most people are, and that's what's amazing. For the long term, yeah, I'm worried about the economy, but the people who are vulnerable. I'm worried, about the elderly. I'm worried about the kids, how they're resilient too, and they bounce back, but whether they will go through life now looking over their shoulder, wondering what's coming, sort of thing I didn't have to do. But I sort of think, everyone says everybody is going to change. I mean, I think of myself, once we get the all clear, everything's fine, I'm going to be hugging people. I'm going to be shaking hands. I'm going to be going to restaurants. I'm going to be hanging out with friends as much as possible. I'm going to be traveling when I can. I mean, I think I'm going to go right back with a vengeance to the way it was, but with a new gratitude, with a new awareness of how amazing it is to be able to walk out my front door and not be afraid, to go to the grocery store and not be afraid.
Yeah. And I mean, and you of all people know, I mean, life is short. We can't, we have to get back out there with a vengeance, because.
Do you think you will? Do you think much will change in how you go about your daily life?
I think the same thing, that, the things that I maybe took for granted, the littlest thing of going in somewhere and getting a coffee and seeing the person that would always give me that coffee, I will appreciate. And so I think it's kind of like what we were just talking about, grief, is that this is a little humanizing and for me, because I think it's putting things into perspective, the things that matter, the people that have been reaching out to connect on Zoom who I haven't heard from in 15 years. It's, making sure that you are really, I think, looking at what's important and doing that. Right. And we need that reset every once in a while. And unfortunately, it had to be a pandemic, but you are my all-time favorite mystery writer, because the genre of mystery is one of my favorites. Agatha Christie was I was a fan of Agatha Christie when I was just a young boy because I love whodunits, and I would write all the characters down on a piece of paper with little check boxes, and then I would make check marks on who I thought, did not do it, so that I could see if I got it right at the end.
How often did you get it right?
With Agatha Christie, not that many. Other writers, maybe. That's why I always say to my husband that we can't watch Law and Order, or I can't watch mystery movies or anything, because I always figure it out. And I'm like, oh, it was that guy because of that. So reading all these mysteries has helped me through that. But another reason that I love your books is because they're much deeper than just a whodunit. They are really mysteries of the human condition and things that we all go through.
Thank you.
Each book has a theme that is really insightful on that human condition that we all share. I was wondering if there was any that you wanted to talk about, or any that really leap out at you that you really had to reflect on that when you were writing. Like, which ones leap out at you?
I think that's a wonderful question, and thank you for also. I mean, clearly, you're a thoughtful guy, and seeing that the books are proudly and clearly crime novels and murder mysteries, but that they are, that's just the alpha. It's not the omega. It's the beginning, that's the leaping off point. It's like I consider the murder or the crime like the Trojan horse, that inside which is a whole bunch of other things, including all these themes about what it means to be human, about the choices we make. And that's an ongoing theme. It's one of choice and the consequences of our choice, of being aware, of being awake human being. But specifically, a couple of themes that run through, that are veins through all the works. One is a quote from Auden, one of my favorite poets, and it's his poem for Melville, and it starts off by, and it's actually quite appropriate to what's happening now. The line is, "Goodness existed, that was the new knowledge. His terror had to blow itself quite out to let him see it." And it's perfect that we're talking about Melville and here on Nantucket. So the books are about terror. The terror not only of an outside attack, unexpected, probably by someone you know, but the terror that we carry around inside ourselves, the terror of being alone, the terror of rejected, the terror of failure, the terror of the judgment of others, all those things that can drive us, the terrors of our own making. And then at the end of the day, if we're lucky, it blows itself out, and we come to the understanding that goodness exists. Goodness is stronger. Goodness exists. The terror masked all that was good. And we're seeing that in the world right now. There is reason for terror. There's reason for fear. But more than that, there is reason to believe that goodness exists and it will triumph. So that's what the books are about. They're about goodness and they're about terror. But the other thing is another line from poetry. God, and I've just forgotten the name of the poet. But the line is, I was much too far out all of my life and not waving but drowning. And how often have we felt like that? Putting on the smiley face, the veneer, that everything's fine. How are you? I'm fine. Maybe not. And now we're quietly asking for help, and people are thinking that we're waving, not drowning. And I think most of us, you certainly don't get gray in your hair without having gone down for the third time, a couple of times.
Well, most of us right now, I feel, are fine as how Ruth defines fine, which I don't know if we want to say that on here, but I believe that's how I would, if I say I'm fine, that's what I mean.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And how humanizing is that? It brings us all together. We're all effed up, insecure, neurotic, and egotistical. But we're also decent.
So your most recent book, A Better Man, it asks the ultimate what if question. It asks, if you knew your child's killer might walk free, what would you do?
Right.
Are we all capable of murder?
Yeah, I believe so, given the right circumstances, for sure. Maybe not. I'm not sure we're all capable of premeditated murder. I don't think I am. I know I could lash out at someone. You could just be overcome with rage. And I've felt that rage at times in my life, and it's only probably, honestly, the fear of getting caught that stopped me from picking up the baseball bat. But I don't think I could actually scheme. I think you know, the core of decency would stop me. But I think on the other hand too, we're all capable of forgiveness, and I think that's important. And what was important to me was understanding that, because I thought I could never forgive someone who killed my child. And, you know, I'm still not sure I ever could, but I do know that it is within the realm of human possibilities to do it, because I've seen it. We've all seen it. And heard interviews with people who have genuinely managed to do that. But it helped me to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean that we have to become best friends. Forgiveness doesn't mean I'm going to invite the person into my home and have dinner with them. Forgiveness just means I can let go of that resentment. Remember hearing that resentments are like drinking a cup of acid and expecting the other person to die. I don't want to carry that around all my life. So I need to figure out how to let that go. And I think we can. And there's freedom. There's freedom in that.
You are just as beautiful of a speaker as you are a writer. I find myself kind of just staring as you're speaking. So thank you. We also get to explore different art forms and hobbies through all of these characters. And I feel like I butcher these characters' names because I have such a Midwestern accent. So it's Gabri, right?
Oh, good for you. Yes, go on.
And Jingai.
Oh, close. It's Jean. Well, really nasal. Jean.
And is it Rain Marie?
Wren. Like the bird. W-R-E-N. Wren Marie. Yeah.
Okay. So you get cooking from Gabri being a chef, and poetry from Ruth, and painting from Clara. Are all of these hobbies of yours, or just things you're interested in?
None at all. Not at all. I can do none of these. Every now and then, Tim, I forget that I can't paint. So or draw. You know, it's like I was in Venice once with Michael, and I said to him, you get the luggage and I will arrange for the boat. So I walked over to the boat place, opened my mouth, and it was only then that I realized I don't speak Italian. Honestly. So no, I don't paint. I can't. I mean, I cook. I've certainly, I think like most people, cooked more in the last month and a half than I probably have for the last 10 years. It's not pretty, it's barely edible, but it's there. But I love eating. So when I write with poetry, a stack of poetry books and a stack of cookbooks beside me, often the fireplace, which you can see here on. When Bishop was alive, he'd lie in front of the fireplace. And yeah, so I consult them, but I have no skills except writing, absolutely none.
That I would never have guessed that, because it's. Can we talk about the new book coming out in August?
Yeah,
absolutely. All the Devils Are Here.
Yes.
I have it on my e-reader, but I just cannot read on an e-reader. I can't focus on it. But
so you got one of the advanced copies. You got an advanced copy of it, do you?
Yes. Well, and I begged the publisher for but I don't know if they're sending out ARCs right now, obviously. So they're like, well, we'll send you the e-reader. And so I think I have to put on my big boy pants and just read on an e-reader. But
you know what? I agree with you. I wouldn't wait for the book. I'll get in touch with them and have them send you an ARC. Make sure that they'll throw it onto the ferry.
Okay, well, thank you. Because, I mean, before I started getting these arcs, in which I'm not complaining, obviously, my favorite thing in the fall, I don't know if you have this with reading certain authors, if you read them over, that you have a time of the year that obviously your books come out in the fall. And there's something about that briskness of a fall day that just reminds me of a Three Pines mystery.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Yeah. And this book is actually set in the fall. It's set in September. Most of it is set in late September in Paris. So late September in Paris is slightly different from late September in Quebec, in that late September in Paris is still like summer, and late September here is, we're getting pretty close to winter. So yeah, I decided that it was time, and I do it every now and then, like with The Beautiful Mystery and with the book 4, which was set in a country inn. I tried to take the characters out of Three Pines for variety's sake. And it was time, I felt, to send Gamache to Paris, where his son Daniel lives and granddaughters live. And so it's set in Paris. Yeah, and All the Devils Are Here is a quote from Shakespeare's Tempest. And it starts off by, "Hell is empty and all the devils are here," which I thought was interesting, because the book's also, at least I hope it's interesting. The books really are about duality as well, about this beautiful place, whether it's Paris, but mostly Three Pines, and the encroachment of evil, of between light and dark, between the public veneer and our inner thoughts, the gap between what we feel and what we actually say. And I thought it was interesting to explore darkness in the city of light.
So is that the overall theme, when we were talking about before about the human condition and everything, is that the overall theme you kind of dove into for this one?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's sort of one of the themes. The book opens, I won't go into too many details, but Gamache is sitting in one of his favorite places, which in Paris, which not coincidentally is one of mine, and it's the Musée Rodin, the Auguste Rodin Museum, which used to be Rodin's home, and gardens, the surrounding gardens, and it's a walled garden. So it's like a place out of time. You don't really even know that you're in Paris, because it's calm and it's peaceful, but beyond the walls you can hear the sound of one of the great cities of the world, but you don't see it. And Rodin's statues are all around, and Gamache is sitting in front of one of the statues, and it's his favorite one that he remembers seeing as a child, and again, it's one of my favorites, and it's the Burghers of Calais. And he's remembering when, as a child, his godfather had told him the story of the Burghers of Calais. And that, I don't know if you know this statue, but it's haunting, because it's got these 4, I believe it's 4 men, elderly, and they're drawn, and they're skinny, and they're emaciated, and they're in rags, essentially in their undergarments, and they're chained. And the Burghers of Calais were the leaders of the community who were told by the king that he would lift a siege of Calais, and everybody was starving, if the leaders of the community would strip down to their undergarments, be chained, and come to the front gate. And everybody knew they would be executed, including the leaders. And so one by one, they gave themselves up. And so this is a statue of that moment when they arrive at what they believed was going to be their execution. And what it shows, unlike a lot of statues that we have all seen of wars and battles, was that there's always valor, there's an angel on their shoulders, they're marching proudly toward an honorable death. These men are afraid. There's nothing, there's no particular, they want to be anywhere else but there. It's a searing statue, but it talks about real courage, and that's what this book is about. It's about doing something when every fiber of your body wants to run away. It's about the nature of courage.
Well, I can't wait to read it.
On e-reader? Are you going to do it, or are you going to wait for the ARC?
Oh no! Now I'm gonna right when we get off this talk, I'm gonna email you to remind you to have them send me one. What would the writer of Still Life, your first Three Pines novel, say to the writer of All the Devils Are Here?
That's a wonderful question. You know, I think I would say to myself back 15, 16 years ago, to just enjoy it more. I was so afraid when Still Life came out. It was the culmination of a dream. I had dreamt all my life. I was in my mid-40s. I had spent my entire life since the age of 8 dreaming of having my own book out there. And I finally was holding it in my hand, and all I felt was terror. Terror that I couldn't do it again, because now I have a 3-book contract. But also fear that it would be rejected, that no one would like it, that no one would read it, that it would be a failure. And I wish I just said to myself, just love it, enjoy it, understand. I would say to myself that I am living not just my dream, but the dreams of so many other people who would love to have a book out. So just enjoy it, enjoy this blessing. Yeah, there's a poster I have in front of me now, not right now, but when I write back home. And it's the last words of the poet Seamus Heaney, who said on his deathbed, "Noli timere," and it means be not afraid. And I have that in front of me because I'm still riddled with fears and insecurities. And I have to remind myself, don't be afraid. You know what? You can do this. Dig deep, do justice to the characters, and understand that this is a blessing. This is that I am so fortunate, and don't corrode it by unnecessary fears.
What about the other way around? What would the older author say to the younger author? Oh, wait.
The younger to the
younger
older
author say to the older author?
Probably, for God's sake, never dye your hair, because the coronavirus is coming. No, I don't really know what the younger author. Maybe thank you. Yeah, I hope that would be it.
Okay, so last thing, my favorite thing to do with authors is a speed round where I ask you about your favorite things.
Right.
So are you ready?
I'm girded. I'm ready.
Okay. Favorite book as a kid?
Charlotte's Web, probably equaled by the series Anne of Green Gables.
Favorite novel?
To Kill a Mockingbird. That's so dull. I'm sorry about that, but there you have it.
Favorite nonfiction?
I read a lot of nonfiction. So right now I would have to say The Professor and the Madman.
Favorite?
That was a book. That's a book about the making of the first dictionary. Fascinating. Fascinating book. Oh yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. I think it has a different title in the UK as in the US, and I'm not sure what it's called in the US, but and
what's the author's name?
Oh, it's Simon Winchester is the name of the author. Anyone who's a bibliophile or loves words will love this book.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to pick it up. I just was reading what's his name? He wrote it's right here. Bill Bryson.
Don't you hate it when you're like, you can't remember the name?
Bill Bryson's book, and it talks about the English language in the United States. And it's really
Bill Bryson. Now, was he at Nantucket Festival?
No.
He needs to be asked. He needs to be invited. I did an event with him. He's such a nice guy. I mean, I was blithering, right? Because I couldn't put two words together. I was just staring at him. It was so exciting.
We went to Australia before all this started, my husband and I for vacation in February, March. And so I read his book, The Fireburn Country, and it was so amazing. So favorite literary quote?
C.S. Lewis, Surprised by Joy.
Favorite mystery writer?
Josephine Tay. But I also loved Agatha Christie for sure. And I reread her now in the middle of this because comfort food, comfort reads.
Agreed. Book that made you cry the hardest?
God. I can't think. Can I get back to you on that?
Yeah, you bet. Book that made you laugh the loudest?
Probably A Confederacy of Dunces. I love that. But you know what? The book that made me cry the loudest, this might be cheating because I've already said it, but Charlotte's Web.
Book you've read multiple times?
Well, I reread Agatha Christie's. You know, again, through this and through different, when Michael was ill, I would read them. Didn't matter that I knew who'd killed them. It wasn't about that. It was just about the comfort.
Yeah, I'm finding definitely rereading books right now because I can't get into anything new, but a reread is actually what's working because I can't really focus on something new. It's like, it's interesting how that works.
I'm wondering if because there's so much uncertainty now, there is comfort in knowing.
Yeah.
You know how it's going to turn out. So that's not a question anymore. Now we can actually enjoy the journey.
Which is really profound if you think about it, because it's almost taking a hobby like reading or something and turning that into applying it to how we're trying to get through this pandemic, which is interesting. What are you reading right now?
I'm like the last person on earth to read Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. I've just started her trilogy. And enjoying it. It's such an interesting technique, writing technique. I've never read that before.
Yeah.
So it's almost like
definitely open those up because those are three. I like a big, long book.
Right.
So let me know are you just on the first one?
I'm just on the first one, and I read slowly now, and it's not speeding up with age. I'll tell you. And I only read at night and in bed. So I'm like, so it takes me forever to read a book.
Louise, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's a highlight of my week. Thank you very much.
Oh, and for me, I've been looking forward to this, Tim. Thank you. And I hope to see you at another Nantucket Festival when things clear up.
I hope so too. And you hang in there and
too.
Just be safe and stay well. And again, thank you. You were the sweetest person that I met at the festival a few years ago, and I'm really happy to have this virtual connection. So thank you.
Me too. You be well.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.